Steven Tyler turned 77 in 2025, and something happened at the Rock Hall induction that nobody expected. When cameras caught him without his usual stage makeup, fans couldn't believe their eyes. Deep lines covered his forehead in ways that shocked even longtime followers. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. Recent photos show something else entirely. His hands shake now, and doctors say it's connected to his wild past. The man who once screamed on stage for hours can barely whisper. What really happened to the rock legend's face will leave you stunned. Steven Victor Tallarico came into the world on March 26, 1948, at Stuyvesant Polyclinic Hospital in Manhattan, a place that had seen generations of New Yorkers before closing in 1978. His father, Victor, was a classically trained pianist who taught music in high school, and his mother, Susan, stayed home and carried her Polish roots with pride. Their apartment was always filled with piano notes and strict rules. Steven grew up surrounded by sound, but he also grew up feeling like his family wanted him to fit into a tight box. Music became the one thing that felt warm and alive. Yet it also became the thing he secretly argued with, because his parents wanted discipline, while he wanted freedom. That tension settled deep inside him long before he ever stepped on a real stage. When he was 3, his family moved to the Bronx, hoping life would soften up. Instead, the neighborhood kids shredded his confidence. He was skinny with curly hair and an odd walk, and boys in the 1950s, Bronx didn't let that pass. They teased him, shoved him, and pushed him out of their circles. Every school day carried a sting. He acted out to defend himself, and soon he was challenging teachers as much as bullies. Home wasn't the comfort he wished for either, because his father's strict practice rules made Steven feel like he could breathe only when he slipped outside. By age 6, he had found a strange kind of peace in local parks, where doo-wop groups sang under streetlights. He stood there listening, imagining himself standing in front of people who actually wanted to hear him. In 1957, when Steven was 9, the family moved again, this time to 100 Pembroke Drive in northeast Yonkers. Life shifted from city noise to a calmer suburban hum, but Steven's mind only got louder. He discovered drums at 8 and used pots and cardboard boxes as a kit. At night, he would sneak Elvis Presley records into his room and copy every move, every shake, every shout, hoping nobody caught him. His father played Beethoven in the living room, while Steven spun Elvis in private. That quiet war between classical and rock planted the seed for the performer he would become, someone who could scream, growl, whisper, and soar all in one song. Around age 10, Steven uncovered a secret no kid forgets. His grandfather had been a bootlegger in the 1920s, running illegal alcohol and dodging the law. Steven loved it. It made him feel like rebellion ran in his blood. The idea that someone in his own family once lived outside the rules clicked something in his mind. If his grandfather could break the mold, maybe he could too. The stories became fuel. He carried them like a badge, and later used that same wild spirit to push his music far beyond what anyone expected. Asthma hit him early, and hit him hard. He spent days stuck indoors, gasping for air, listening to his own lungs betray him. While other kids ran outside, he lay in bed imagining bright lights and crowds. Every attack trapped him, but every fantasy freed him. He dreamed himself into someone larger, louder, untouchable. Those lonely hours shaped the showman he later became. His onstage screams and leaps weren't just performance. They were escape routes built during childhood sickness. The asthma stayed with him, but he learned how to turn weakness into a kind of fire. By 1962, when he was 14, Steven had turned all that bottled energy into a band called The Strangers. They soon became Chain Reaction, and Steven began as the drummer. In 1964, during a messy garage jam session, he let out a scream that sounded just like Little Richard. The band looked at him, stunned, and pushed him to the front. That moment changed everything. At 16, he had already opened for acts like the Beach Boys and the Byrds. He wore platform shoes and wrapped scarves around himself long before it became his trademark. Teachers didn't love it. They suspended him for indecent behavior. But Stephen didn't care. He was chasing something big, and every rebellious step pushed him closer. In 1966, he was expelled from Roosevelt High School for marijuana use and switched to Quintano School for young professionals in Manhattan. To pay for it, he busked on the streets and sold leather goods he made by hand. His life became a mix of music, hustling, and late-night parties where drugs were easy to find and even easier to use. His father wanted him to follow classical music, but Stephen had already chosen the loud path. Quintano exposed him to the wild heart of the 1960s counterculture, and that spirit soaked into his voice, his writing, his attitude. A year later, in 1967, he went to a ski resort in New Hampshire and crossed paths with Tom Hamilton. They bonded over Jimi Hendrix and jammed all night. No one knew it then, but that session was the first spark of Aerosmith. Stephen was known around local clubs, but meeting Hamilton gave him the missing piece. Their chemistry was instant, alive, and hungry. It felt like the start of something that could shake the walls. By 1968, the Vietnam War draft hovered over every young man. Stephen slipped into anti-war protests, dodged police, hid in band vans, and escaped arrests by seconds. He refused to accept a system that tried to box him in. Some of his friends were drafted and never came home. Stephen avoided it because his drug use and rebellious streak pushed him outside the acceptable lines. That time shaped the defiance he carried into Aerosmith, a refusal to bow, bend, or break. By 1969, he was gigging in Boston clubs with Chain Reaction. He crowd-surfed shirtless and dove into chaos that shocked audiences and sometimes started near riots. His bandmates argued with him constantly, but crowds couldn't look away. The Boston scene became his training ground, a place to build the wild force that would later explode in arenas. Then, July 31st, 1970 arrived. Steven Tyler joined Joe Perry, Tom Hamilton, Joey Kramer, and Ray Tabano in Boston's Fenway neighborhood, and Aerosmith was born. The name came from a comic Stephen once read, mixed with a dream he had while high during rehearsal. They practiced in basements and tiny apartments, living on instant noodles and sleeping anywhere they could. Rejection came from every corner, but Stephen held the vision tight. Their first real show happened on November 6, 1970, at Nipmuc Regional High School in Upton, Massachusetts. Only about 200 kids were there. Stephen performed Mama Kin and ended the night by smashing Joey Kramer's drum kit because they were paid only $50. The fight spilled into the parking lot until police stepped in, but word spread. A band that wild was hard to forget. In June 1972, Columbia Records signed them for about $125,000 after Danny Goldberg spotted their chaotic show at Lenny's on the Turnpike. Smoke filled the air. The crowd was loud, and Stephen stood in the middle like he owned the world. Columbia took a gamble, and Aerosmith finally had their shot. The early tours in 1971 and 1972 were rough. They traveled in a psychedelic painted van with no bathroom, no beds, and barely any money. They showered at truck stops and lived on cheap food. Stephen even vomited on stage once from bad hot dogs, but the crowd roared and the band kept going. The van became a rolling home filled with sweat, laughter, and tension, shaping their legend from the ground up. By late 1972, Stephen and Joe Perry were fighting over lyrics and control. They almost fell apart until they took a trip to Sunapee, New Hampshire. They drank, partied, promised each other they would rise together, and came back united. Soon after, they fired Ray Tabano for unreliability and replaced him with Brad Whitford. Stephen had already drifted into heroin, worrying the band, but Whitford's steady presence helped pull them into focus. They recorded their debut album between late 1972 and early 1973 at Intermedia Studios in Boston. Stephen's raw vocals on Mama Kin scared the label but thrilled the band. They kept every unpredictable shout. The album dropped in January 1973, modest at first, but it planted their flag. The chaos, the hunger, the fights, the dreams, all of it shaped the sound that would take Aerosmith from basements to the top of rock history. Steven Tyler walked into the record plant in New York in 1974 with a voice that still sounded young but a drive that felt older than his years. The band was trying to finish Get Your Wings, and they were running out of time. The last thing left was Lord of the Thighs, and Jack Douglas pushed Tyler harder than anyone had pushed him before. Tyler stood there overdubbing harmonies for 12 hours straight, stacking his voice again and again until it felt like something inside him was tearing. By the end of the night, there was blood sliding down his throat, yet he kept going because they needed that final sound. Those deep, bluesy layers changed Aerosmith's music forever. The album soon became their first real step toward fame. But it was also the first warning that Tyler's body would not come out of rock and roll untouched. Dream On had been sitting in Tyler's world since 1969, when it was only a piano demo he played to himself. It didn't explode until 1975, when a re-release sent it shooting to number 6. Suddenly, every radio station wanted a piece of it. But that attention came with trouble. Tyler gave raw interviews in Boston, and the stations couldn't handle his language. He called censors prudes and mocked their rules until a few stations banned him. The bans only made fans love the song more. Dream On became the piece that made Aerosmith impossible to ignore and made Tyler look like he was born for rebellion. By the time the California Jam rolled around in 1975, Aerosmith was already living wild. 250,000 people stood in front of them at the Ontario Motor Speedway, and Tyler felt the rush hit him. He ran across the stage, climbed high on the drum riser, and leaped 20 feet into the air like he couldn't fall. He hit the ground wrong and broke his heel, but he kept singing. Pain didn't matter. Cameras kept rolling. People screamed louder. Backstage stories grew even stranger with talk of wild parties. But the leap itself stayed in history. It showed exactly how far Tyler would push himself just for the crowd. Toys in the Attic came later that same year, and Walk This Way came out of a 20-minute riff that Tyler and Joe Perry threw together like lightning. Tyler wrote the lyrics on the walls of the record plant stairwell because he had no paper and no patience. And in the middle of the chaos, he kept snorting cocaine off the mixing board to stay awake. Jack Douglas admitted years later that the studio became a place where no one slept, and everyone tried to chase some kind of edge. Those habits were dangerous, but the results changed music forever. Walk This Way touched rock and rap and everything in between, and the album pushed Aerosmith into the world's spotlight. In 1976, Detroit got the show no one expected. Tyler spotted a girl in the crowd and asked her to marry him right on stage. The crowd screamed for the spectacle, but backstage, the world turned messy. His girlfriend, Bebby Buell, rushed the stage and confronted him, and fans said it looked like a fight pulled straight from a movie. It made headlines everywhere. Aerosmith was already known for trouble, but this moment showed just how tangled Tyler's personal life had become. Rocks came in 1976, and Back in the Saddle thrashed with a whip crack that sounded perfect. But that sound wasn't easy. They tried using a real bullwhip first. It didn't work. It hurt more than it helped. After hours of failure, they spun a 30-foot cord and snapped a cap gun to get the crack. The album reached number 3, but the band was slipping. Tyler's voice slurred at shows. Fans were confused and sometimes angry. Drugs were taking hold so strongly that even success couldn't hide it. Then came the 1977 Rolling Stones tour. In Baton Rouge, Tyler stood next to Mick Jagger, and belted out Brown Sugar like the stage belonged to them both. The newspapers loved it, but behind the scenes, Tyler nearly overdosed on heroin after sharing drugs with Jagger. One moment he was shining under lights. The next, he was fading out backstage. It was a sign of what was coming. By 1977, in the Draw the Line sessions, Tyler collapsed in the studio after injecting heroin. They had to stop recording for weeks. The delays cost around $200,000. Producers tried to get him to sing straight, but his addiction ruled the room. People whispered about whether the band would even survive. Then, in 1979, a strange thing ended everything for a while. Backstage in West Hollywood, Tom Hamilton's wife, Terry, got doused with milk by Joe Perry's wife, Alyssa. Tyler snapped and punched Perry, and the fight blew up fast. Hours later, Perry quit. The band fell apart. Years of ego, drugs, and chaos had been building toward that single moment. A year later, on July 9th in Portland, Maine, Tyler overdosed on methadone. He collapsed into the drum set mid-show and needed CPR before being rushed to the hospital. The band had to cancel an entire tour. It was the clearest sign yet that something had to change, but change didn't come easily. After Perry left, Jimmy Crespo stepped in and helped create Rock in a Hard Place in 1982. Tyler barely showed up. When he did, he was high on Percocet, his vocals flat and tired. The album peaked at number 37, their lowest since the beginning. Critics said it sounded like a band falling apart. They weren't wrong. In 1983, the band finally tried to save him. They met Tyler at Café La Fortuna and begged him to enter rehab. He agreed. He spent 30 days at Hazelden. Detox hit him with hallucinations and pain. He came out clearer but still disconnected from the group. The wounds from the past were not easy to clean. A year later, he overdosed again. Valium and vodka in a hotel room. Paramedics dragged him back to life. That fear pushed him into his first AA meeting. It was a step, but the road stayed rough. By 1985, things almost turned around when talks about Perry returning began. Then Tyler relapsed again during rehearsals. The reunion fell apart, and Tyler drifted toward small projects like a cameo in Rogues Gallery in 1986. His slurred lines had to be reshot. The years felt lost. Tyler's personal life during these years was tangled too. In 1976, he had a brief affair with Baby Buell. She became pregnant and gave birth to Liv Tyler on July 1, 1977. Out of fear of Tyler's lifestyle, she named Todd Rundgren as the father. Liv didn't learn the truth until 1991, when a DNA test revealed everything. She was 14. The shock was deep, but she eventually grew close to her biological father. Tyler also married Serinda Fox on September 1, 1978. Their daughter Mia arrived December 22, 1978. The marriage cracked under the weight of drugs, affairs, and constant touring. They divorced in 1987. Serinda struggled in the years that followed and passed away in 2002. Mia grew up with memories of a father who was always gone. The darkest story of Tyler's past came from 1973 when he started a relationship with Julia Holcomb, who was 16 at the time. He became her legal guardian, and the lawsuit that emerged decades later told a painful story of manipulation, drugs, and trauma. Tyler called his mistakes crimes of passion, but the world saw something far more troubling. After divorcing Serinda, he married Teresa Barrick in 1988. Their children Chelsea and Taj were born in 1989 and 1991. Tyler's addictions strained the marriage until they separated in 2005 and divorced in 2006. In 2011, he got engaged to Erin Brady, who helped him confront some of his past. Their relationship ended in 2013 after she discovered old love letters from the 1970s. Tyler admitted he was ashamed of the man he had been. Years later, he fell in love with Amy Preston, who started as his assistant. They went public in 2016. She was 38 years younger, but their bond grew through recovery work and shared battles. Then something changed. Tyler got clean, and Aerosmith rose again. In August 1987, they released Permanent Vacation. Dude Looks Like a Lady hit numbered 17, and the album sold more than 4 million copies. Suddenly, the band was everywhere. Tyler was sober, creative, and hungry to reclaim his life. By 1989, Rolling Stone named them America's #1 hard rock band. That same year, Pump gave the world Janie's Got a Gun. Tyler layered his vocals more than 50 times on that track. It hit number 4 and won him his first Grammy. The album sold over 7 million copies in the US. In 1990, Aerosmith stood before around 1 million people in Moscow. Tyler crowd surfed and flashed peace signs at Soviet guards while the world watched. It became one of the most surreal concerts of the era. In 1993, Get a Grip came out and sold over 20 million copies worldwide. Cryin' became huge. Tyler jumped off a cliff during the music video shoot and broke 3 ribs, yet he kept going until filming was done. 2 Grammys followed. The band had climbed back to the top. In 1994, their Ballpark Brawl tour made $35 million. Tyler briefly relapsed backstage in Detroit, but caught himself fast and returned to sobriety. The tour proved they were truly back. 9 Lives arrived in 1997 and almost flopped, but Pink saved it. Tyler rode an elephant in the video, and the album reached #1 and sold more than 6 million copies. He dedicated the song to his father, who passed away in 2001. Then came the song that shook the world. In 1998, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing hit #1 and stayed there for 4 straight weeks. It sold over 1 million copies in the first month and helped the Armageddon soundtrack move more than 11 million worldwide. Tyler's emotional performance made it a global classic. Steven Tyler walked into Magic Ventures' studio in New York in July 1986, thinking it would be just another session. But the moment he stepped into that room with Run DMC, something shifted. They stood together in the same space and recorded the new version of Walk This Way like a single heartbeat. It was strange for that time because rock and rap almost never touched. Yet here they were blending the Aerosmith hit from 1975 with the raw edge of hip-hop. When the remix came out, it shot to #4 on the Billboard Hot 100. Aerosmith went from selling around 2,000 albums a week to more than 10,000. MTV ran the video non-stop, and suddenly, rap rock became a real force. That one day in the studio opened a door for the world, and bands like Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park later walked through it. Years later, Steven found himself in a totally different spotlight. In 2011, he joined American Idol as a judge, and the paycheck was big, somewhere between $8 and $10 million per season. His wild personality lit up the screen. He kissed Pia Toscano on the cheek, and the tabloids had a field day. He said the show made him travel 250,000 miles, which drained him until he walked away after season 12. His team was not happy because Jennifer Lopez made $17.5 million per season, almost double what he earned. His bandmates felt the tension too. They believed the TV life pulled him away from Aerosmith. When he left the show, Keith Urban stepped in and Steven went back to music full-time. Long before all that, he had already opened his life to the world in his 2006 memoir, Does the Noise in My Head Bother You? It landed at #2 on the New York Times bestseller list and shocked readers. He talked about the chaos of the 70s and admitted he burned through $20 million on drugs. He wrote about parties, fights, rehab, and the trail of damage he caused without fully facing the pain behind it. The most haunting moment came when he revealed a suicide attempt in 1986 after swallowing 30 pills before his girlfriend saved him. The rawness of his stories made the book a hit and proved he could hold an audience with words just as well as with songs. His acting moments were short but unforgettable. In 1993, he appeared in Wayne's World 2 and played a roadie version of himself with a harmonica in hand. In 2005, he showed up in Be Cool and even made fun of his aging reflection in the mirror. These cameos were tiny windows into his humor and charisma. He never chased acting, but whenever he showed up, he left a mark. As he grew older, his focus shifted to something deeper. In 2015, he started Janie's Fund, after thinking about the pain behind his song, Janie's Got a Gun. The fund raised $25 million by 2025 and paid for 66,000 therapy days for 525 abused girls. It worked across 12 states, plus Washington, D.C., and aimed to help nearly 4,000 girls every year. In 2021, he opened a new center and spent time with the girls himself. The project became one of the most powerful celebrity charities in youth recovery and showed how personal his mission was. But life tested him again. In 2021, he released his solo album, We're All Somebody from Somewhere, a step into the world of Nashville. He worked with Carrie Underwood and others, and the album hit #1 on the top country albums chart. It sold 16,800 pure copies in its first week. Songs like Red, White, and You Felt Bold While Hold On carried pieces of his hard-won resilience. The album came after a relapse scare and carried the honesty of a man who had been to the edge many times and still kept moving. That edge had shown up in 2009 when he underwent surgery on both feet for severe bunions caused by decades of tight boots and wild stage moves. Doing both feet at once was rare and extremely painful. Doctors put him on OxyContin, and the pain pulled him back into addiction. After more than 10 years of sobriety, he fell into prescription drug dependence and checked himself into the Betty Ford Center in December 2009. Aerosmith had to cancel their tour, but he came back in time for the 2010 Grammys. By speaking openly about the relapse, he reminded fans how powerful and dangerous painkillers can be. Just when things seemed steady, he faced another crisis. On August 5, 2011, he crashed his motorcycle in Maui and walked away with a fractured shoulder, a deep head cut that needed 20 stitches, and a lacerated liver. He went through 8 surgeries. Yet weeks later, he walked on stage at the 2011 VMAs with his arm in a sling and joked about his rock and roll bones before singing a bit of Dream On. The crash forced more tour cancellations, but his refusal to sit still showed how much performing meant to him. Then came the shock in 2023. Aerosmith launched their Peace Out Farewell Tour at UBS Arena on September 9th, when Steven pushed too hard in the opening moments and fractured his larynx. The injury caused bleeding, and he stumbled on stage. Doctors said he needed months to heal and might never fully recover. The rest of the tour was postponed. Fans were stunned because his voice had carried the band for more than 50 years. The injury showed how fragile even the strongest singer can be. In 2024, he tried everything to recover. Stem cell injections in Utah and Nashville offered hope, but not certainty. By August, doctors decided the damage was permanent. Aerosmith announced they would retire from touring after more than 50 years. It was painful, but inevitable. A whole era of classic rock seemed to bow its head as they made the announcement. Even after that, he still found moments to share music. In February 2025, he appeared at the Jam for Janie charity event in Los Angeles. It was his first performance since the injury. He sang 3 songs including Dream On and Walk This Way. His voice was rough and his neck looked swollen, but the crowd stood and cheered. Doctors warned him not to push himself, and the bruises told their own story, yet he still gave the room everything he had left. Later that year, at the 2025 VMAs, he joined Joe Perry for a tribute to Ozzy Osbourne and sang Mama, I'm Coming Home. He barely moved to protect his throat. The performance touched the audience and earned another standing ovation. After he walked off stage, he was rushed to the hospital for vocal strain. The tribute showed how powerful he still was, even with limits, and how high the cost of performing had become. After stepping away from touring, he poured himself even more into Janie's fund. In 2025, he opened a new girls' center in Tennessee, using $10 million from tour savings to build an endowment. The center offered therapy, residential care, and support for hundreds of girls each year. It became a living symbol of how he turned his own pain into something healing. As all this happened, fans began talking about the way he aged. At the 2025 Rock Hall induction, his face drew attention. Deep forehead lines suggested heavy Botox use during the 2010s, even though, in 2007, he insisted he only used eye creams. Side-by-side photos from the 2000s and later years set off debates about genetics, cosmetic work, and the toll of decades on the road. Some fans even speculated that early heroin use gave him an oddly smooth, youthful look, which faded as time caught up. His face became a symbol of how complicated aging can be for rock icons. In 2025, his partner Amy Preston shared glimpses of his life at home on Instagram. Fans noticed tremors in his hands, which many believed were lingering effects of past drug abuse. Even with the tremors, he practiced yoga almost daily. He discovered yoga in his 60s, and it helped him stay flexible and strong. Photos showed him cooking, laughing at gatherings, and jamming with friends. At 77, he moved slower, but still carried that spark. The tremors reminded people of the battles he had fought, yet his commitment to health made him feel like a survivor in motion. His home life looked quiet and real, and for once, the world could see the man behind the legend, still standing, still learning, still holding on to whatever music he had left inside him.